I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2020, and the time is 7 o'clock p.m. Dr. Hillman, there were a few items in the table file.
Yes, this evening there were just a handful of personnel items, and then we added an additional recognition proclamation that was sent to us by the Department of Education after we distributed the board packet on Friday.
Okay, thank you. We'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We now have an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for residents, business and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Northfield Public School District to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll move on with announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman, do you have any?
Yeah, this evening we do not have any formal announcements or recognitions from the superintendent's office.
Okay, but I am pleased to once again talk about our distinguished school board member, Noel Stratmone. As you see, we were able to get the photo. As you know, he was recognized by the Minnesota State School Board Association for his 40-year service on the board. We know that that is the fourth longest tenure in the state of Minnesota since they have been tracking, but Noel is currently the second most tenured, currently serving school board member. There's a gentleman in southern Minnesota, I believe. I don't recall the community.
How old is he?
Well, he has been on the board for 50 years, so Noel has a ways to keep pace. We know he will continue to keep pace with that individual. Anyway, it's so it was just a wonderful lunch. A few board members were able to make it in support of Noel. It was really gratifying. The 300 plus that were at the luncheon spontaneously applauded and sprang to their feet at the announcement of a school board member being there for 40 years.
Matt stood up to take my picture and everybody else stood up.
Well, that's your version. Mine is what I saw of a very enthusiastic and really a crowd that was in great admiration of the length of service. And Sam Wilmus is here tonight from the Northfield News. So we want to thank him for the wonderful story you did about Noel, and front page no less. So it was really great. So anyway, Noel was accompanied by board members and of course his wife Lois. So it was a really wonderful day.
Thank you all for being here.
Absolutely.
It's our pleasure.
Okay, so no other announcements and recognitions. We'll move on to our first item for discussion. We welcome, as part of our building updates, our last two, Sibley School update, Principal Scott Sampis. Welcome, Scott.
Hello.
Scott, if you press the escape button on the keyboard there,
Hello.
and then you'll see right behind it is the PowerPoint.
Yep.
You can close that out. And then just click on that PowerPoint there, and then go up to the window menu at the top, all the way at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going over.
There.
Click window, and then you'll see yours, third one on the list. And then go to slideshow and present, and you'll be good to go.
This one here?
I think so. No, if you want the other, get out of that one, to the one to the left.
Yep. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you for having Sam and I here tonight. We're excited to share our progress thus far. We have several literacy and math academic goals, and those are all measured with our MAP testing and our MCA testing. So I'll be reporting back to you on those when I come back in the summer to share our year-end goal. But at this point, we are moving along. We are off to a fantastic start at Sibley, and I'll talk a little bit about what's going on, and then our construction project and how that's going, and challenges we faced. But we started enrichment groups this year, and our academic coaches are leading those enrichment groups. And as of last Friday, we had 63 students who were in reading enrichment groups, and we had 82 students in math enrichment groups. And then Tanya Will and Becky Gainey also do 2 45-minute sessions with each classroom over the course of a month, where they offer some enrichment challenges to students in a classroom setting. and that has gone well. We're really happy to see that launch this year. We're in our second year of our collaborative classroom, our CCC. That has been going well. I always talk to teachers about the first year something's new, it's brand new, and we learn it as we go. The second year, it's new again, but we have experience with it, our background information, and this year, in that second year, we are cruising. We are getting to know the curriculum a bit more. We're supplementing where we need to supplement, and teachers are reporting really good things. And I know that Dr. Hillman has talked in the past about my history here in Northfield with literacy, and you know, this is the first 2 years out of my 21 years here where I feel like our entire district is on the same page. And that is a really good thing. And I know that was pitched to you when we came forward with this curriculum about 2 years ago now. Our Friday communication with families, this is an interesting thing that we always thought that our building newsletter was the way to communicate with families. And we would do a monthly newsletter, and we would put a lot of time and effort into it. And in meeting with our PTO 2 years ago, they said, you know, we just don't read that. You know, we get it and we have it and it's available, but we don't read it cover to cover. So we would like something more frequent, and we launched a Friday update, and it's something that I send out. It's something that teachers can send me information if they have some upcoming events. I look at the calendar to see when field trips are coming up, that kind of thing. We also add on different community-wide events that occur. So the Northfield Public Library is really good about giving us information, especially going into a break. They'll send us information that we include in that newsletter, and we've gotten a tremendous amount of positive feedback from families about that over the course of the last year and a half that we've had that implemented. Sharing good news, last year, after our parent survey, we held a meeting at results rollout meeting at Sibley, and our entire staff came together. We looked at the survey, we brainstormed the certain areas that we really need to focus on, and one of those areas was sharing good news with families. And we felt like we were doing a really good job with that, but then again, we didn't have any kind of record of who we were communicating with and when. So we took a page out of Bridgewater's book here, and we printed up 2 postcards for every student, and the classroom teacher took one of those postcards, and then the rest of us on staff take the other postcards, and over the course of the first probably 6-7 months of school, we plan to reach out twice to each family with a positive message for each child. So I think we are about 70% through those postcards, and we've gotten some really good feedback. So, you know, when parents get that postcard in the mail, and you know, it's not tied to any kind of conference or report card or anything like that, it really does give kind of an uplifting message to that family. The other thing we implemented this year is we found a cool old phone. It's new, but it looks like an old phone. And we have positive calls home. So we have a little spot in our coach's office where it's that area is actually staffed a couple hours a week, and teachers can fill out a card, and the student will go down to the coach's office, and the coach actually helps the student place the phone call. And they said, you know, mom or dad, I'm calling you, typically at work, and saying, Mrs. Haar sent me down here to tell you I did a great job on my project. And this has gone really well too. So we're happy to have that implemented, and we'll continue to roll that forward for the next couple years. Our construction project is going extremely well. I meet with the construction superintendent a couple times a month. I talked to him about when I should be more involved, and I think in the spring, probably right after spring break, I'll be meeting with them on their weekly construction meetings. But the progress that I've heard from Barry is that they are, if not on time, they're ahead of schedule, and that's a good thing. And we're really excited A couple cool things have come from this. We've had a lot of trade workers in, and Kelly Johnson actually has a window to see everything going on. And she went out and talked to one of the steel workers, and he came in and gave a 10-minute talk to her entire class about what they were doing and where this metal originated in northern Minnesota and where it was shipped to out on the West Coast and how it got back, and it was really kind of a cool thing. So they all gave him a piece of candy for his tool belt when he left. So he enjoyed that. Our Responsibility Center discipline, it was launched this August, and that has gone well. We actually had 7 teachers go to the second training of the Responsibility Center discipline that was put on by MESPA. And those 7 came back, and they have formed a committee within our building, and they send out weekly scenarios, and our PLCs then go over that. They take 5 minutes and go over that scenario in their PLC and troubleshoot how would you handle this. So that's been a cool thing to watch happen as we've progressed through the year. They also, that group of 7 also provides a 10-minute, roughly 10-minute staff development opportunity once per month at our staff meetings. So that's been fun to watch. And the other thing, I put class size on here. You guys probably hear about class size a lot as far as being high, but right now at Sibley this year, we are sitting pretty good. We have one class of 27, but everybody else is in the range from 20 to 25, with the average class size at Sibley being 23.3, something like that. So that has been going well for us, and we've been down a few students this year. Overall, I think we're down about 20 because we had a large 5th grade that moved on. But it's one of those things in a building where space is an issue. You can feel that mostly at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. But it's class size is really a nice number for us right now. Some problems we're trying to solve, and I saw Nancy had this on her report. Children's mental health concerns. That's an ongoing thing within our schools. As luck would have it today, I was meeting with Sarah Pratt and Cheryl Hall during our lunch, during our administrative meeting, and the 3 of us started talking about children's mental health and some of the individual students that we have at Sibley. And Cheryl shared with me that we are eligible now for Fernbrook services. So Cheryl actually sent an email today, and she will start that application. And it's something that we're interested in, and we're excited about what could happen with that moving forward. Our current space issues are they're large. It is a huge issue with the space we have right now, and I know that there's light at the end of this tunnel, which is great. It is one of those things that we've dealt with for several years, and this new project that we have is going to provide us with so much needed space that we're all excited about it. And I'm going through placing people now in what I think will be their location for next year, and we actually might have a room that will get used by volunteers and such, but it won't be assigned to anybody. And that's something that I've never known as a principal at Sibley. So relief is on the way. Traffic patterns have been a significant issue since we started the construction project, and I over-communicated with parents, and I think it took us about a month to really get through all of that. But our construction folks, Wold Architects, engineers, they were really good about helping with that process. One really good thing that came out of this is we moved our buses to the front of the building after school. They've always been in the back of the building. And as we look to next year, we're going to keep it that way. It really has worked out well. And I think with the widening of Maple Street a couple years ago, that allows buses to make left and right turns out of there more easily than it was before. And Nancy Johnson always said, it's tough to get out of there, but we can also control traffic with our crossing guards and stop traffic so buses get out on time. It's also nice for us in the front office front office administrative assistants to be able to see what's going on out there. And if we are looking for a student where a parent comes in last minute to pick their child up, instead of riding the bus, everybody's in the front. We're not radioing to the back. I don't know what the turn radius is going to be like in the back of the building for buses, and so we've just made the decision. I worked with the Benjamin Bus folks, and we're going to continue this. So our buses are in the front in the morning and in the afternoon, and that's working well. The other thing is, the last few years we've seen a drop in volunteers. When you look at the unemployment rate being so low, I think a lot of our parents are working during the day, and we have had trouble with finding volunteers. St. Olaf and Carleton have been great as far as delivering on requests, and then with our Move 5 effort, I know that has generated a lot of requests, and those are being filled as we continue to move forward. But we are at that point in the school year where we have been. We've worked hard to get to the start of the second semester, which is tomorrow, and I've been through a lot of these school years. I would say even with the construction project, this has been one of our smoothest starts in my history in Northfield. So it's good, and part of that is we have. I don't think I have hired a new teacher for 3 years. So we've had the same staff come back. This is the third year in a row. And that's been fun to see. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, this has been really a fun new addition to our board reports, is having the building principals come back mid-year. So it's been really great, and your report is just excellent. So questions, comments board members have? Rob.
So this is just kind of a big general question, since you've been in the Northfield Public Schools for about half a Noel. I'm just wondering what the biggest changes you've seen over that time, and then what are the kind of most exciting and positive things that kind of keep you going and make you, happy to come back again in September.
Sure. Well, I would say the biggest changes the last several years have been our curriculum changes. That literacy curriculum was very significant for us moving forward. That's number one. I think what keeps me coming back is, I always tell people there aren't many middle-aged bald men who are treated like a rock star at their job. and to see our students come through and have an opportunity to watch them grow. I mean, I always say that most students will never spend that long in any other educational institution than the 6 years they spend in elementary school. And we try to make a difference every day. I think the other thing that keeps me coming back is the staff that I work with day in and day out. And I say that about the Sibley staff, but also our administrative team. It's great people. This is a fantastic community to work in, and I just love being here. Yeah,
Thank you.
You bet.
Other questions, comments? Ellen?
So thanks again for this report, and it really helped to have the narrative that you talked us through. I'm curious, so you mentioned that you'd seen in Nancy's report about the mental health concerns, and another thing that she raised was the math curriculum and what she's sort of thinking about at Bridgewater, and knowing, like what you said, that the CCC is going really well and how excited you are about literacy. At Sibley, are there things like that that are sort of like now coming up on the surface now that other things are stabilizing?
Yeah, I would say the math curriculum is one of those things. It's a spiraled curriculum. It's not a mastery curriculum, and I think that can be troublesome for students. I think the other thing about the EM4 is that it's a pretty language-rich math curriculum, and that can be challenging for our students who have some literacy issues, and you put those two things together, and it can be difficult for some of our learners.
Other questions, comments? Amy?
Thank you for your presentation. I come from a background in volunteer management, so of course when you said you have fewer drop-in volunteers, and I was just wondering if if that could be related to the fact that you graduated a big 5th grade class and those parents moved on to maybe middle school volunteers, or if you track the volunteers in any way and try to keep them in the fold specifically. Just tell me a little bit about what you do with volunteers.
Well, a lot of our volunteers are actually reading with students, doing math activities with students, that kind of thing. I would say that as far as numbers go, I'm basing my information on the number of requests we have versus the number that are filled. And that's something that could be different every year. The toughest thing is we get some wonderful college volunteers, and they get started and they get traction, and then they're gone for a month or 6 weeks. And those holes that we fill in December and January, this is probably our leanest time because of those college students being gone. We did graduate a big class, and I hope that the 5th grade parent volunteers from last year are helping out at the middle school if they have that need. Typically, we don't have a lot of parents that come back to us after their students leave elementary school. But we do have a few a few parents, or a few grandparents actually, that never left. They still come back. They're one guy I'm thinking of, his youngest granddaughter is in 8th grade, and he continues to come back. And we have a grandparent who drives over from Byron twice a week. Turns out he was my high school basketball coach way back in the day, and he has 2 grandkids at Sibley, and he drives over 2 days a week to read with students and support in the classroom, support kids in the classroom and teachers, and he does whatever he can to help out.
That makes me want to ask, do you communicate directly with grandparents, or do they just get brought in through the parents?
Typically through the parents, yes. Yeah, we don't reach out to grandparents unless we really know them. And but I can think of probably 3 or 4 offhand that came in and they just haven't left. And that's fun to see. They make connections with teachers, and I think that's what the teachers just continue to go back to them if they need help, and it works out really well.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I had a question. You sort of teed up that Nancy had talked about as well as I know Sam Richardson will talk about, as well as really children's mental health concerns. And we certainly know that continues to be ongoing, and as a board we try to address that with the social emotional learning and then the behavioral coaches. And if you can maybe just sort of talk about what sort of impact that has had. And then in your site improvement plan, you talked about an inventory that teachers would complete that would measure the social emotional health of their students versus risk or at risk. And if that has occurred yet, I know it's only January, and then what you see sort of ongoing, obviously Fernbrook helping, but just sort of the impact that some of that has had on that, even though we know it's continuing to be an issue.
Right. The social emotional curriculum has been terrific. And Peg Witt has led that effort for us at Sibley, and she continues to teach lessons in classrooms. Typically, team teaches lessons with teachers, and kind of lends her efforts that way. We did do the inventory. We've done the first inventory. We will do the next one in the spring, and we can measure where we're at that time. My experience with the children's mental health issues is that we are seeing more students who are explosive, more students who have a really tough time gathering themselves and composing themselves and being ready to learn. And we do what we can to support that. Noreen Cooney is excellent in her role as a school social worker. Peg is excellent. But it is something that is concerning. I feel like our EBD numbers have gone up over the last couple years. We have a wonderful support network in our EBD classroom, but it is one of those things that is a concern. And I can guess where it stems from, but I don't feel like I know enough to talk about that right now.
Okay. And then the responsibility-centered discipline, it sounds
Mhm.
like that's been well received. I know Nancy said her staff had felt like it was well received. It's so great that you're taking it to that next level where you have that building committee that's going to continue to reinforce it. And then one thing I know you've always talked about is the praise to reprimand.
Mhm.
Are you still doing that along with responsibility-centered discipline? Did that seem to mesh well together?
It's one of those things that it didn't make it onto our school improvement plan this year, but it's something that at a certain point in the year, I will send a message out to staff saying this is what I'm looking for when I come out this week and visit your classrooms. But it is something that we always try to push a couple times a year just to keep it fresh in the minds of our teachers.
Okay, good. Good, excellent. Well, and of course, we'd be remiss in not acknowledging you about the construction projects and certainly the extra workload it is for everyone and some extra stress factors there in terms of trying to do work in a construction area. So we appreciate you having to do all the extra communication and then some of the challenges it will not only maybe have occurred, but certainly as the project continues, will continue to impact everyone in the building. So we appreciate that. And
Sure.
of course, as Dr. Hellman says, you have to put up with a little rain for the rainbow. And it sounds like the rainbow's getting here just in time.
It is. And I will say, I'd like to put a plug in for Knutson and for Wold. They have been nothing short of amazing during this process. And I know you all have worked with them and gotten reports from them, but it's been a pleasure to work with them throughout this project. One more thing about that responsibility-centered discipline,
Yeah.
that group of 7 is actually going to train our educational assistants as well.
Oh, excellent.
So they're holding a session with them in February. We're going to do it on a Wednesday morning when we have a late start to give us a little more time to do that. But it's something in my rounding conversations with EAs, it's something that EAs asked for. So we're gonna actually move forward with that.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent. Great report. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, following that report, we're looking forward to another great report by Sam Richardson, principal of Greenville Park Elementary. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. See if I can cue this up.
Corners, yeah, there you go.
That works too. All right. There we go. Well, members of the board, Dr. Hillman, Chair Pritchard, thank you for having us here tonight. And many of the things that I will be sharing will probably mesh with what Nancy, Antoine, and Scott Sanis have shared. But the biggest news at our school is what we are calling the 700 to 500 transition, as we found out that the new address of the new Greenville Park building will be 500 Lincoln Parkway. We have been able to have that as our rallying cry as we get ready to prepare for the new structure and packing up the current building. We did, many of you had an opportunity to come by and help us in our ceremonial beam signing, and there's a picture there of Rico the gecko, our mascot, being kind of ceremoniously carted over to the new site by the Knutson team after the students and many of the staff and many of you were able to sign one of the beams that went into the 2nd grade, 5th grade wing of the new building. So that's been very exciting to watch that happen, and a number of different things have happened because of that. We did STEM projects 2 weeks ago, and 2nd grade students were creating new playgrounds, kind of mocking up possible examples of what could be for a new school playground. Our art teacher has been having the students in one of the grade levels learn about different construction materials and construction careers, and they're using art to represent what they see next door. So that partnership with Knutson has been really fun for the staff, and watching this building unfold is very exciting. While we are getting ready for the new school, we also are still running our day-to-day operations, and kids are still coming every day. The collaborative classroom in the second year has been a highlight for us. As Scott mentioned, that second year is new again, but instead of learning everything for the first time, teachers are tweaking their approach and making small changes and adapting to the new students who are in front of them this year. And that's been very, very positive. At the same time, we continue with our multi-tiered systems of support. Those interventions that we talked about in our site improvement plan are a big part of what we are doing for students. In the past 2 years, we have really worked hard to provide interventions for students who are not meeting the grade level expectations. And we did that through a series of different supports that we provide, and both in math and reading. This year, we're also looking at the enrichment groups, and I know Scott referenced those enrichment groups with our instructional coaches for both math and reading. For those students, we have initial reports back from our measures of academic progress. Our winter map data is showing excellent growth for those students at the high end and those students that were not performing at grade level. So that's very encouraging because a lot of work went into designing and identifying those groups and the group makeup. Data-driven decision-making continues to be a big part of what we do. So those intervention teams, in collaboration with the instructional coaches, are meeting every 6 weeks and taking a look at what is happening and what does the data suggest about how the students are doing in those small group pull-out programs, and sometimes they're push-in programs. And that has helped to make more frequent decisions. At the same time, our winter measures of academic progress data is being reviewed by teams. We use PLC time on Wednesdays, and we also have teams that are coming and meeting with me and doing this in more of a formal data day session. And those will be coming up. They have tied their work into their individual team goals, and also examined different groups of students that may need more or different instruction, and that will be all based on small assessments that they do in the classroom on a frequent basis, independent reading conference notes that they have, and then also the formal assessments that we give for that. We are in the second year of having 2 behavior coaches. This is another multi-tiered system of support component. We wanted to have regular small group instruction for those students who need more than what the second step lessons that are provided to the entire class as a kind of a base core instruction piece in social and emotional learning. And so we have regular groups meeting with Chris Johnson, who collaborates with our other behavior coach, Melissa Larson. And so they do a nice kind of complementary system of both lessons in the classroom, supporting the second step lessons, individuals that need kind of that real-time intervention, and then they also have the regularly scheduled groups where they can practice skills that students will need to be successful in the classroom. So that's been a very positive piece for us. Scott mentioned that helping students with those social emotional skills continues to be a huge part of what all of our staff members are doing on a regular basis. And I should mention that with it being our paraprofessional recognition week, the governor released a proclamation thanking all of those paraprofessionals and educational assistants. Educational assistants play an amazing role in our schools and help out with a number of students in this area from the time they set foot on the campus for breakfast and morning recess until the time they get back on the bus or walk home. So a huge part of that. We also participated in that district effort for the responsibility-centered discipline, and similar to the other schools, staff are continuing to learn about that and implement the strategies there within the framework of other things that we've done at our school, continuing sessions there. And then also the positive communication plans, big theme from those parent satisfaction surveys through the Studer process last year. And our staff determined that they wanted to find out how do parents appreciate being communicated with? And so we did a survey in the fall at the Ready, Set, Go Day, and teachers and our office team worked hard to compile the information. And we found out that there's a variety of ways that families like to be communicated with each day. A number of them use technology or leverage email, texting. The teachers also often are using the Seesaw app and are able to communicate with families quickly. The phone calls are less frequent, and they often go to voicemail for many, although not all. And so staff members have used that and then created a menu of ways to communicate with the goal of making 2 positive communications home during the school year. The neat part about that is specialists, small group instructional providers, special education teachers have all pitched in to help with this effort to make sure that all families are receiving those 2 communications. So we've already heard of some anecdotal examples of small notes that went home to students that were part of our Title I and ADSYS groups in the fall, and other staff members being willing to reach out to families with a note, an email, or a call, depending on how parents had listed. So I thought it was a neat way to differentiate our communication home and really to try and meet families where they're at for that. So that's been a real positive start, and I think on top of all of the positive components of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, staff members have been asked to participate in user groups. They've been asked to meet and do some professional development around some of the spaces that we don't currently have that we will have in the new building. So we met in our Wednesday professional development session last week and talked about the new Flex Lab that will be in our building, a durable surface that can be wet or dry, green screen for video production, a Lego wall, a magnetic wall, tables that are flexible and can be moved into many configurations, storage for projects and materials that can be used for STEM activities, and the new science standards that are being adopted and coming soon. So that was very exciting, but it's additional work on top of what they're already doing day to day. So. Problems that we're trying to solve. I've been really impressed with the collaboration between our special education team and our social worker, Joy Amanrud, our behavior coaches, and our staff in general. We also had a key link. Our Fernbrook mental health therapist was named Emily Holton, and we created a very collaborative team situation where students that needed more individual or families that needed more support could link up with Fernbrook. And we got the news right before we returned from the break and moved into 2020 that she was resigning. And so we're in this place of limbo where we have not replaced her position yet. Fernbrook is working hard to do that, but it is highlighting how important that service was, and that having that mental health therapist on site to see kids really remove some barriers. And there were some really key relationships formed with staff and students, and she was a wonderful resource. So as we continue, I'm really in communication with Fernbrook, hoping that they can find another talented person that can come in and work in such a collaborative way and help those students and their families who need that extra level of support that we just can't offer with our 8:15 to 3:15 schedule, while we're also providing instruction. And I would say also in our Studer process, the rounding conversations that we held at our building, and we did this fall, meeting with each staff member and asking the same set of questions. One of the questions is, what resources, tools, or support do you need? And more tools and strategies for working with students that have I would say more complicated mental health needs or social emotional learning needs than we sometimes can provide for one teacher working with 22 students in a classroom. Figuring out how to best do that and continue to help that student learn, that's a key piece that we're working on. 2 years ago, we launched a new English language model of service. Our English language teachers, Matt Bergwall, Joyce Lindstrom, and Ellen Trotman, did a wonderful job thinking outside the box about how we could help protect core instruction for our students who needed to receive more than one support service. So we had students that perhaps needed some speech language service and also receiving English language service would pull them out of more than what we would feel comfortable with out of reading or core math. And so they adopted the Being a Writer curriculum for students that were English language students, and we're providing language development and the writing curriculum in collaboration with the grade level teachers. And this has certainly been positive from the writing standpoint, and the teachers have done a phenomenal job of introducing writing to these students who are receiving English language services. The trick becomes that as we receive the yearly tests for English language learners, the WIDA, we also examine listening, speaking, language development, writing, and those components we are studying to see, are we providing the language development and giving students enough opportunities to learn to develop those vocabulary skills they need, to also have enough opportunities to speak and to enhance their reading. So we're examining this, we're trying to figure out the best way to do that, to still provide those students with all the core instruction they need, to not have a fragmented day where they're pulled out multiple times during the day and never feel anchored in one place, but to also make sure that we are providing effective language development service. So it's a complicated, collaborative, building-wide process to build a schedule that works for all students, and we're continuing to do that. Also, our 5th grade math work, the 5th grade curriculum and our math results for MCAs, for the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, have not been where we would want them to be for the last several years, and that's district-wide. We were looking at a group of 5th grade math teachers with our instructional coaches, determining how do we best move forward with our 5th grade math instruction, making sure that what we are presenting to students and that curriculum that we're providing is aligned to the state standards, and helping students to show their abilities on that test. The 5th grade team has implemented the iExcel program, an online math program that allows differentiation, also allows for students to demonstrate their abilities and need for reteaching or review on those math standards that will be represented on the MCAs in the spring. At the same time, they also have introduced some new assessments. Instead of doing one large end of the unit assessment, they're doing weekly checks, so they're more frequent, and they're allowing teachers to very quickly turn around and reteach or enhance the instruction for students that are showing they've already mastered those skills. And that's been very positive. 5th grade teachers are reporting that the skills that they are being able to assess are more pertinent to what they're teaching, and students are finding that they're really feeling more confident that what they've learned that week is being assessed, and they're not being assessed 2, 3, 4 weeks later on something that they've learned. So the spiraling curriculum, as Scott mentioned, has a lot of benefits, but that mastery component is being examined this year with the 5th grade. And I applaud them for taking on something that does require them to think differently and work together across all 3 buildings. So I think in conclusion, in my summary, I just wanted to mention how positive the staff has been in regards to the transition to the new building. This is a lot of work and a lot of thinking new about how we operate, and staff members have really been asked to prepare for this transition for some time now. And so we talked about really making sure that our work in the first part of the year was about this year, and now we're starting to do more in looking into that transition and thinking through all those things that a staff member might have to do to wrap up the school year and have a successful end to this school year, but also be prepared to have a successful transition to the new building. And I think our motto has been every gecko every day, and really looking at making sure that each child is being successful, and that staff members are identifying that individual child's needs, and the staff members have really demonstrated that every gecko every day component. I think one other thing I'd like to mention is just that we did experience an extremely painful loss. And in the weekend of January 12th and 13th, the death of Sarah Moyer, a much beloved educational assistant who worked with our kindergarten and our special ed programs and was a key figure on the playground and crossing guard positions, lunchroom with the students, has really been difficult for our staff and our students and our families. And so in the midst of all the excitement of a new building, we're also experiencing that grieving process, and the close-knit nature of Greenbelt Park really shines through at this time as they lift each other up. So thank you for having me here tonight. Questions or things that I can help articulate about Greenbelt Park?
Excellent, thank you. Questions, comments? Rob?
So one of the things I've enjoyed reading about recently is about the kindergarten teacher who won the agricultural award. And I'm wondering, there must be other teachers in the building who have special interests like that, who kind of bring that little extra piece to their classroom. Do you have other examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tiffany Courtbine was recognized for her passion and for her leadership in bringing agriculture education into our school. As the creator of Farm Day, which we hold each spring, she does have some co-collaborators. She's had either educational assistants or actually our office specialist, Brooke Bolfer, has helped with that project. Robert Garcia is another person that comes to mind because he's helped co-coordinate that Farm Day effort. And Robert has also and several staff members have done some really neat and innovative things with technology. They've presented at it used to be TIES conference, I think it's now Sourcewell conference each year, where Minnesota educators come together around educational technology. We've had teachers that have worked together and have a passion for STEAM or STEM education, and I can think of several. I won't list them all, but Danielle Amundsen and Ann Larson and Heather Ryden and Mary Beth Youngblood have come together to figure out ways to introduce different STEM activities and provide some of those opportunities, along with Amanda Miller, our media specialist, and Anna Kelly. And so I think there's a number of different people in that area. We have people who are passionate about literature and have done a number of neat sessions for our staff with Diane Torbenson and Kimber Dimmick, and Mary Beth Youngblood did a session last year helping figure out ways to ignite passion for learning about different books and genres and authors. So there's a whole host. I'd love to go through probably each of the 83 staff members. I could get some passion for students and student learning in there for sure.
Excellent. Yes, Rob?
And then when I came over to sign the beam, you shared some of the questions that the students had about the building project. I wonder if you could share some of those.
Absolutely. So we look through this building project through the eyes of adults. And so a lot of this really makes sense to us, what we're doing here. But the students, and Rob's right, the students had some fascinating questions, and they weren't sure, would the name of the school still be Greenbelt Park? How many teachers were coming over? Was this teacher coming with them? Would I still be the principal at the new school? They were curious about, would we have a playground, or are we going to have to walk all the way back to the other playground? So we were able to clarify that the staff and the teachers were coming over. It would be a little different building configuration. But we are very aware that for some students, this is rah-rah, this is a great thing to try out something new. For others, there's really a comfort in the known space at Greenbelt Park, and so a new space provides some anxiety. And so some of our teachers have been very wise in raising this question, and so we do think very carefully about how we help them transition, providing them information and doing some really planned explorations of the space will be important for this spring and next fall as well.
Amy?
So thank you for your presentation. I'm curious about how affected the students were by Sarah Moyer's passing, and how much they, since you interacted more with younger students, how much they understood and how the staff has helped the students through whatever process they're going through.
Sure. So one of the things that we talked about with our staff was that we know adults all grieve in different ways, and we know that students are still humans. They're tiny humans, and they don't always tie their shoes, but they're humans, and so we wanted to make sure that we were very sensitive to helping them. I was very, very impressed with the support that the district team showed on that Monday. And so we had support from Noreen Cooney from Sibley and Jamie Wiebe from Bridgewater, and the principals Nancy and Scott pitched in, and then also our special education leadership with Kelly Fearkolb and Sarah Pratt and Cheryl Hall, and all the district leadership figuring out ways to help. But one of the things we were very intentional about is figuring out the best way to help the students, because staff members were definitely sad and visibly sad that day, figuring out how to talk to students about that and how to help the parents talk to students. So we provide a lot of resources for families, and we're available. But for younger students, it can be very difficult, and so helping them understand, and the teachers are very adept at that. Our social workers and our behavior coaches are very adept at how to say that that very, very sad news in a way that makes sense to kindergarten students, and we're not always sure how it will affect all students, and so we're very aware, looking for cues and clues as to how they're responding. So some students become very removed and quiet, and teachers know the students so well, and they know that this has affected them. Others come real close to teachers at times like these and stay real close when normally they were moving around the classroom and more comfortable. Some were sad and cried, and they needed some process time with staff. Noreen and Jamie on that first day were available, and then the staff members that they know were available. And we did connect with some families that we know have experienced trauma and grief and loss, to make sure that we were connecting with them as well. So yeah, there's no playbook or way to prepare for that. I think I'm just really impressed with our teachers, our staff members, how they handled it.
And I want to just step in here and let the board know the exceptional job that Sam did with this very, very difficult scenario. This is one of the most difficult scenarios you face as a principal. We found this information out literally less than 10 minutes before the start of the school day. And because of social media and the way things spread, many people were finding out about this very quickly. It became very emotional very quickly. And Sam's ability to communicate was able to help us get him the support that the school needed. And then to watch how Sam just did this masterful job of consoling people while continuing to make sure all of these necessary items are in place was nothing short of exceptional. And so I always think a true mark of a leader is how do you handle things when it is not the easiest and you don't have all of the information and you have to make split-level judgment decisions about how we're going to handle this. Yes, we have some part of it planned out in our crisis plan. There's some strategies that we have. There are some protocols, but none of that prepares. It's on paper, right? And none of that prepares you for the moment that it happens. So as sad as it is and as important as Sarah was to our community, I think she would be proud of how the team came together to support each other. And I think it's exactly how she would have wanted it, to come together in that circumstance. So Sam, you just need to be publicly congratulated for handling a very difficult circumstance with tremendous grace and the ability to navigate all of these very difficult things at the same time. So I couldn't be more proud of your work every day, but I was even more proud of your work during this very difficult thing. Sam was also one of the main speakers at Sarah's funeral and represented the district in an amazing way, of which I am very proud of. So Sam, publicly thank you for your leadership of that building during a very difficult time, accepting help when you needed it, and then able to make the decisions that you needed to make sure that people were supported.
Other questions, comments? I had one question, or I just wanted to actually just highlight the work of that fifth grade PLC team, because that was nothing short of amazing. Tom Baroniak and I on Northfield Forward heard their presentation, and it was just amazing. And I think the work that they're doing and really going, just taking the EM4 and then taking it to the, looking and redesigning curriculum, and the excitement and the passion they had for it. It was really fun to see. So, and again, it's going district-wide, which is great. So I just wanted to say I was glad you teed that up. And then also you work obviously with connecting with parents. And I think, obviously a testament to that is the work you had to do this past week with the occurrence of the passing of such a beloved colleague, and how that parents feel even that much more connected now to the school as a result of how well that was handled. So we appreciate it. And of course, we have to acknowledge the amount of work on your plate with the new building, and the way you are really torn with a number of things happening. And so we really appreciate all that you do. You're an amazing leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, excellent. All right,
Just
so.
make one comment.
Yes.
So just one thing I want to point out, you heard the 3 elementary presentations. You can go, Sam, there's no question. But it wasn't all that long ago that our 3 elementary buildings really operated as independent agencies with almost their own individual plans for each building. And I hope what you saw in these mid-year reports is that the term that we use is baseline consistency. So it shouldn't matter which elementary school that you go to on our district, you should have a similar experience as a baseline. I hope that you have seen that come through with both the things that people are celebrating and the problems that they are trying to solve, and the collaborative nature that we're seeing, as Julie has pointed out a couple of times, across the buildings. People that did not happen, for a long time, or when it did, it was by accident. These things are happening intentionally right now, and it's a result of the strategic plan that we adopted a few years ago, and the continuing piece that we've moved forward to try to create. We don't want buildings to lose their character or their sense of a certain amount of autonomy, but the piece that I think ran through all 3 is you see, yep, we're doing these 3 things or 4 things in a very similar, they may manifest themselves just slightly differently, but I'm really proud of the work of our elementary PLCs and our principals to make sure that that's happening. So just my editorial comment on that.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we will go on now to the proposed 2020-2021 operating capital and long-term facilities maintenance budget. And to do that presentation is Val Merdister, Director of Finance. Welcome, Val.
Thank you. I'm learning the Mac. It's scary.
Very impressed. If you start doing keyboard shortcuts, then you...
So I am presenting the capital and LTFM budget tonight. This is the first of our moved up budget presentation timeline. This is one that we've actually typically done a little bit early, just for getting out ahead of the quote and bid process and making sure that we can get all the work secured. All schools are doing lots of work in the summer, and it's a pretty short and tight time frame. So this is one that's we had moved up maybe 2 years ago, and we're just gonna bump it up a little bit more. The timing actually works really great. We have a capital committee made up of most of our leadership team that meets typically in December every year to kind of prioritize projects for the upcoming school year. And so this really plays well into the timing for that. So just as a quick refresher about what is our capital and long-term facility maintenance budget. So capital is a pretty broad term that we use. There are 4 separate revenue streams that kind of combine into what we call our capital budget. Operating capital is a levy aid mix, and it's, again, they're all calculated based on enrollment or those sorts of things. I think it's about $224 per pupil roughly that we get on average. It takes into consideration your average building age and those sorts of things. Lease levy is also a per pupil allocation. We have typically as a district spent approximately 30 to 40% of this. I think it's $212 per student. That really covers all of our leased facilities. Our lease for the NCRC for community services, those types of things. We obviously no longer lease the Gleason property. That is now our district shop that we own. But we did the lease levy purchase to pay for that over 10 years. So that is still included in it. But there's now an end date on that. So those are the types of things, the hockey arena for hockey practice and the dentist dome, all those go into that. The other thing that is included in that is we are a member of the Canyon Valley Special Ed Co-op. And so as a founding member, we do pay for the lease as a percentage of the students that are enrolled in that program. And that has been pretty consistent each year, but that did increase slightly based on their needs over the last couple of years. The capital levy is actually the $750,000 voter approved levy. We have that through 2023, I believe. And so that is, it's a percent calculation, but we actually levy a flat $750,000 every year because that is what we told the community we would do. And then the long-term facility maintenance revenue was new in fiscal year 17. It basically combined the deferred maintenance and health and safety revenue programs into a new long-term facility maintenance that was phased in probably over 3 years. And so we are at the full amount now, which is about $380 per pupil. Again, there's some proration based on your average building age, but we get about $1.4 to $1.5 million annually, which is almost $1 million more annually than we were getting with the two programs prior to that. That has been instrumental in helping us maintain our facilities across the district. And so each of these, the top three kind of all are grouped together under operating capital in a restricted fund balance, and then the long-term facility maintenance is its own separate restricted fund balance. So you'll see throughout the presentation that I have them separated a little bit just so you can see the breakout of those. These are all included in the general fund, but like I said, we do present them separately based on the Department of Education's requirements and also as a way to help facilitate the project management over the summer. It is restricted. Again, like I said, both the expenditures have restrictions on what we can spend the money on, and it is a separate fund balance, so we can't just utilize the funds to cover other costs. So this is kind of the total dollar amounts for the revenue sources. So you can see the long-term facility maintenance is the largest piece of that at about 43%. So about 1.47 million there. The capital levy is 750,000. Operating capital is about 807. We get more than that, but we do have one outstanding bond that was a reduction for the operating capital revenue, which I think is about $140,000 a year. And that was a strategy that we were able to use several years ago to not ask the voters for additional revenue for supporting a roofing project, I believe. And then the lease levy is really just the revenue that comes in to cover our anticipated lease costs at $386. So 3.4 million total. I just realized when I was sitting here that the top of my labels are not on the actual slide. So that is 17-18 and 18-19 actual results, our current 19-20 revised budget, and then the proposed budget for 2020-21. So the leased facility and assessments is pretty closely tied to our lease levy revenue. It's slightly higher because we are not allowed by MDE to lease levy the operational costs that are built into the leases. So there's, depending on the lease and the language in the lease, there's 10 to 20% that we can't lease levy for. So that's what the discrepancy is there. We do have the lease purchase for the Sibley edition that we did in 2009-10 at $142,000. That is lease levy eligible, but there was an intentional decision made at the time just to pay for that out of our operating capital. The technology leases, again, has been pretty consistent the last several years. A slight increase proposed for the coming year. The schools and programs is the allocation that we do to the buildings. So each building gets a discretionary allocation to replace furniture or supplement in ways that, that they've deemed necessary in their building. Our activities department gets an allocation, the music program, so all those sorts of things are technology and engineering departments each get a small allocation to do some things that that they want to focus on each year as well. Textbooks and digital curriculum, you can see we're increasing for the coming year, and that is primarily due to the science standards that are coming. We know there's quite a few changes coming and grade levels, switching curriculum and things, and so we're kind of just building in an anticipation for that. It is going to be phased in, but textbooks are pretty expensive, and so we're just planning ahead for that piece of it. As we discussed at the last board meeting with the financial projection, we are planning to move about $300,000 of our network technician salaries into the capital budget to free up some general fund dollars. And then the Gleason property, I just wanted to throw that on there as a kind of one-time reminder that we did purchase the vacant lot next to the shop. You actually have to drive through the vacant lot to get to the shop. So that made sense. That's about 3.49 acres. So that was a one-time expenditure that we did use our operating capital fund balance for. And then the capital committee, that is basically the money that's left over that the capital committee prioritizes. Everybody kind of generates their ideas and wish list items, and we put them all in a document and basically go line by line, and everyone explains what it is and why they think it's valuable and important. And then it's kind of ranked, and we say here's the ones we really want to focus on that fit within the budget. So for 2020-21, we've got about $1.97 million of expenditures for the capital. And then this is the long-term facility maintenance. Headers on this one make it a little easier to look at. This one I added a little more detail this year than I have in prior years, just to kind of give you some more information in a different frame for this. These are the numbers are the actual UFARS codes that we're required to use, so that's not super valuable for you, but it was easier for me to do the report. But these are all the categories. So that $1.5 million we get, these are the buckets we can spend it in, and there's a document that the Department of Education produces each year that says, here's what physical hazards mean, and here's the things that you can spend it on. So it is very prescriptive, and so not everything qualifies. It is really intended to replace existing. If you're changing the purpose, if you're remodeling and changing the purpose, it doesn't qualify because it has to be the same purpose and preventing erosion and those sorts of things. So, but these are all the categories, so you can kind of see where we've been spending money. We've been averaging about $1 million each year, and that was really intentional to grow that fund balance initially, since it was a new revenue source, and spending $1.5 million is a lot of projects for our buildings and grounds department as well. So really being intentional about the workload and growing the fund balance at the same time was kind of our strategy. So you see we've been pretty consistent. The distribution changes a little bit. We did a pretty significant upgrade at the middle school this year to the controls. Jim Colseth could tell you all about it. I know just enough to be dangerous, but really about how the whole building interacts and managing the airflow and all those things and being more efficient. So that was a pretty significant upgrade. So things like that we were able to do. You will see that this number is much, much higher for next year, and that is extremely intentional. We're in a really great position to be able to infuse some dollars into the projects by using this funding source. So a great example, under mechanical systems, there's $600,000 there for a new boiler at the existing Greenville. My understanding is that the existing boilers are super inefficient. The new ones are much smaller, all kinds of great things, but $600,000 is a pretty big chunk of change for that. But to actually replace a boiler requires you to shut down the building, and we will have a daycare running year round. And so being able to infuse that now when the building will be shut down and not interrupting existing programming that parents are relying on is a really great opportunity. So we are putting in about $1.8 million into Sibley, Greenville, existing Greenville, remodel, and Longfellow. So new windows at Longfellow, not the whole building, but specific areas. We're doing some ADA updates to the nurse's office at Sibley, so supplementing those types of things. The other positive about that is that we already have contractors on site. We're doing a larger bid, and so we actually include the LTFM funding in the total bid package. So we're getting better pricing because they're already going to be doing work on site, and it's part of a bigger project. So definitely a win for the district, and really a way to utilize those funds without adding additional work to our existing staff, even though they're obviously helping and managing the projects. So these are some of the actual upcoming projects. So the capital ones, these are specific ones that the capital committee recommended. We were really intentional about not doing things and recommending things that would require a lot of staff time. We're anticipating all hands on deck this summer to help with the construction and getting people in the classrooms and unpacking and packing and those sorts of things. And so the things that we approved were really, buying Apple TVs that can be pretty much plugged in and those sorts of things, where it was a little less staff time heavy, if that makes sense. Some classroom speakers. Our phone system is pretty out of date, so working to update that. Some computer updates in the media center at the middle school and the ALC. A pretty significant camera security update for Longfellow and Sibley. The shed for the ski team is a product of the rock house going away due to the roundabout. So in the garage, if you're not aware, at the rock house, the ski team waxes their skis and all the things that are required for that. And so they're going to obviously be displaced. And so we are looking at building a shed by Memorial Field for them to still have a place to do that. And some swimming pool touch pads. And then on the LTFM side, those numbers are the actual totals that make up the $1.835 million that we're contributing to the projects. So you can see by the three buildings how much we're contributing. We will be doing some updates to the high school music area bathrooms, and then we have some just annual inspections and testing and things that we're required to do that are included in that funding stream. So as a summary, when you put that all together, you can kind of see where we've been historically for operating capital. This spend down is a little partially because of the one-time purchase of the vacant property, and then landing at about $274,000 for 2020-21. As a reminder, we've set a goal of about $200,000 for operating capital. We switched that. It used to be about $600,000 as a minimum. We switched that to about $200,000 when the long-term facility maintenance fund came into play. The $600,000 number coincidentally was if a boiler needed to be replaced, and that is in fact how much it costs, now we know. So $200,000 is kind of the goal there, so I'm still ending well within that range. The long-term facility maintenance, you can see we've intentionally been growing that, but again, really taking the opportunity with the construction to utilize those funds in a way that makes a lot of sense for the district. So ending about $493,000, which is about $100,000 less than the $600,000 goal. But again, not concerned about making that up in the next year, just due to the amount that we know we'll be receiving. The other point to note is both of these are in some way prorated based on your average age of your facilities. And so I have done the calculation adding New Greenvale, and it's going to impact LTFM we'll see about an 8% reduction. It's really not a big drop at all. So we'll go from about 1.5 million to I think it was like a $50,000 drop, but it then comes back in about 2 years. So it wasn't significant. And so that was a calculation I wanted to run through just so we were anticipating that moving forward. But again, not anything that I'm very concerned about dramatically impacting our availability to do things. So that was a lot of information, so I will certainly welcome any questions that you have.
And the depth and the thoroughness, but yet you keep it understandable for us, which is really amazing, so thank you. Questions, comments? Helen?
Thanks, this was a super helpful report. I had 2 questions. One is the capital levy, the voter approved $750,000. What are our thoughts about that? I'm just in terms of, you'd raised it, I think when we were going out for New Greenville Park, that levy, and I don't know if that's something that is more Dr. Hillman answering, or?
If you have thoughts, you're welcome to chime in.
I'll defer to you first, because I'm fairly certain we're on the same page.
So we've had conversations internally about that. I would say based on the financial projection that I just did, it's fairly essential for us at this point. Particularly, it's primarily technology based and supporting technology. The number for the technology leases was about $540,000, and so that's a pretty significant investment in that. We're invested in that as a district, obviously. Again, it's voter approved, and so there's obviously a process for that. I do think it's 2024.
Right.
I said 23, but I'm pretty sure it's 24 that expires. But I do think it's valuable for the district. But if you have other thoughts.
Yeah, it's one of the, if you remember when we renewed the $750,000 capital projects levy in 2011, it's one of the few pieces that adds on to the previous term. So you'll recall that had been passed in the mid-2000s, and then when we passed on to the 10-year, it allowed us to take it out further from the ending date of the previously voter-approved capital projects levy. I would go beyond even the technology part, because I think we have looked at this in conjunction with operating capital as we've made decisions. So to say what is paid for specifically from the capital projects levy, I think it's fair to say that that's fluid.
Yes.
It has provided us a tremendous amount of flexibility. You have heard over and over how powerful the new CCC curriculum has been, right? That is something that we were able to do because we had that flexibility between operating capital and the capital projects levy. the upcoming science standards change. Being able to have the flexibility to address that in a planful way is really important. You have heard it is probably time for us to reevaluate our mathematics curriculum at the elementary level. Not inexpensive. So when we think about that $750,000, that has given us some tremendous flexibility in addressing curriculum, which of course the technology that we have purchased is a really essential component of that, thinking about how students are interacting. While we have not seen the vision of completely digital textbooks come as rapidly as I thought we would several years ago, we have seen those kinds of online resources and the way that kids are learning and the content modify and change, and we think that that's an important part of it. But all of that has allowed us to continue moving the curriculum forward while also being very good stewards of our facilities. And so I think that the operating capital and the tremendous gift that long-term facilities maintenance revenue was. Former Senator Kevin Dahl, who teaches in the building, was one of the chief authors of that bill. It has been one of the single best financial innovations that the state has done in my 25-year career. It's really helped us. So not only do I think that it's essential moving forward, I think we're going to have to, at some, remember that's been the amount that we have had since the beginning. I do think that at some point we will have to consider not only renewing it, which I would recommend at this point, but also to consider potentially expanding it to make sure that we still have that ongoing flexibility for the resource and the materials for our students.
And to just add to that, the wording on the actual ballot is like a percentage of your, it's some calculation that I'm not going to pretend to articulate. We qualify, I think, for around 900,000 based on our tax. It's a percentage of your tax base, and that's increased each year slightly. We choose obviously to under levy it to 750,000 to honor what we told the taxpayers. So that just gives you a frame. We could do basically a replacement levy at the existing amount and have around 900,000 available to us, but we have chose to under levy that at this point. So.
And I think just also thinking about all of the non-glamorous things that we have been able to do while we've also done these curriculum. We have not been in the case where so many schools in Minnesota have been, where they're literally having to make a decision between replacing part of their roof and buying new textbooks or buying additional. So I think the non-glamorous things that we have done that we don't get complaints about because we've taken care of them, things like the annual work on our parking lots, again, not glamorous, but really important to be done. If you entered tonight at door number 1, you came in on brand new concrete that was put in this summer, that if you were a person who was in a wheelchair just last summer, that was very difficult to navigate because that had eroded due to our Minnesota winters. That is now new, and we are able to keep up with those kinds of things because we have this flexibility to make sure that we are taking care of the facilities that people have entrusted us with.
Excellent, thank you. Other questions, comments? Yes, Rob.
I have a question about the lease levy.
Yeah.
It seems like it was about this time last year that we were talking about a lease for the Farmington gymnastics. Was that a one-year lease? Or
Yes.
So is that being renegotiated? Or is there a new solution for that long-term problem?
So we have not currently renewed the lease. My plan was to kind of see how the season went, meet with our activities director, the gymnastics coach, and really just talk through that and talk next steps and what does make the most sense. There was certainly a cost for transportation to Farmington, so we don't have a solid solution. We really wanted to make sure we gathered feedback and made sure it was the right decision moving forward.
Is there, you said that we use 30 to 40% of that.
Of our lease levy allocation, yep.
So is there a way of using that to further alleviate some of the problems that we've been discussing about sports facilities in our discussion about late start? Is there a way that we might be able to lease some other facilities?
Yep, so similar to the Sibley addition is a great example. So in 2009-10, we added an addition to Sibley that we funded via, it's called a lease purchase option. And so basically, Capital One or whoever gets, it's a formal bid process and following all the rules, but Ellers helped walk us through that, our financial advisor. They basically front you the cash and you pay for it annually after that, and then we can lease levy to get levy revenue for that payment. That's what we're doing with the Gleason property as well. So we paid for it up front, but then we did the lease purchase process. So now we're just paying it annually for 10 years. So that is an option. There are certain restrictions on what you can and cannot do, but facility additions and things like that are options for that.
And I think just because we have a few realities that we're dealing with, and then Rob, to piggyback on what you said about the clear message that we got from the 1,000 people who interacted with us during the late start discussion, a clear thing that we heard over and over again was people wanting their kids to get home earlier from practice, regardless of whether that was a school-sponsored activity or a community-based activity that leases our spaces. So we, of course, are always looking to continuously improve in every area, and we are looking at what I think are some relatively innovative solutions that potentially could mitigate that. We are in the very early stages of looking at that.
But the balance to that is it's lease levy, which is on our taxpayers. So
Sorry.
It's a bigger conversation than just us.
Excellent. Other questions, comments? Thank you, Val. And just want to thank your work. Thank you for your work, Jim Culseth, and the Capital Committee, and just sort of the whole approach around the boiler at Greenville is such a microcosm of how you constantly review and make decisions and have that the benefits of the financial stewardship that you take so seriously, and we so appreciate, because that is just couldn't be a better story. I mean, it's just excellent, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right, so our next item for discussion, I get to spearhead that discussion, which I'm always honored to do. It's the summary of Superintendent Dr. Hillman's mid-year evaluation. So thanks to the board members, all of our board members who completed the mid-year appraisal. As you know, the form itself and the evaluation covers many facets of the superintendent's job responsibilities. I think it gives us a really good reminder of the depth and breadth of the responsibilities that our superintendent has in running our school district. So all 7 board members completed the evaluation, and as board chair, I compiled and summarized all the members' input for Dr. Hillman. I was able to meet one-on-one with Dr. Hillman on January 15th, 2020 to review this appraisal. So in summary, board members gave Dr. Hillman a strong performance rating across all key areas. His overall score was 4.71 on a 5-point scale, again across 52 areas. So quite a comprehensive review of his work. His exceptional work over the past 6 months was highlighted by board members, so I wanted to give a sampling of your comments. All of your comments are shared with Dr. Hillman verbatim, but were not attributed to a specific board member. So 3 areas, one being Dr. Hillman's strength and character of his leadership. Board members cited his commitment to a continuous improvement culture devoted to high standards. He empowers his staff to explore options to achieve success, the confidence to implement, and the support if it doesn't work to confidently ask what's next. Dr. Hillman is a true educator in that he both teaches and learns from his staff, students, and community members. He never just tells people what needs to happen. He involves them in important decisions, considers their ideas carefully, and then comes up with the best plan possible. His commitment to the district getting better is evident in all of his work. Summary number 2 is Dr. Hillman's unwavering commitment to the stewardship of the district's resources. The Northfield School District is a model for how district's financial operations should run. Board members cited his strong oversight of the construction projects to ensure they are proceeding on time and on budget. The district's AA+ bond rating is a testament to the work Dr. Hillman and his team do every day. And finally, Dr. Hillman's commitment to the district's vision, mission, and strategic plan, notably his leadership of the collaborative classroom implementation, his increased focus on a broader range of career and college pathways, and his work on the issues related to diversity, race, equity, and equality stood out for fellow board members. So in summary, board members gave Dr. Hillman an exceedingly positive mid-year performance evaluation. His noted high level of knowledge, experience, vision, and passion for his work, as well as his strength of leadership, gives the board great confidence in his ability to continue to move the district forward. So thank you so much for all of your excellent work, and we certainly appreciate it. Great, thank you.
I appreciate the feedback. It is an honor to serve you in this community, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to get to do this job in this place at this time with the people who I get to do it with. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. So our next item for discussion, Dr. Hillman will talk about the transfer of district property to the city of Northfield for the Highway 246 Roundabout Street project. Dr. Hillman.
Yeah, so as many of you are aware, beginning this spring, we will have a solution to a problem that many in the school community have had shared concerns for quite some time, well before I came here. And so we know that that corner of Highway 246 and Jefferson Parkway, where there is a four-way stop sign, there was actually a time in the last 20 years where there was only 2 stop signs there, if some people remember. And that has been a very challenging intersection. The city has heard those concerns. They really have worked through what I think is a very comprehensive process, using a variety of scientifically valid data to make the determination about what is the best solution at that intersection. I had a chance to sit in on some of those things over the years and hear people talk about the difference between, for example, leaving it the way it is versus considering a stoplight there or using a roundabout. And what I will tell you is from the data that I have seen and the experts that I have listened to, it's not even a question. I wholeheartedly support the city's decision to use a roundabout as the solution at the corner of 246 and Division Street. If you've seen the data, you know that that's the absolute unequivocal right solution for that location. We are benefiting from this. It will impact our 3 schools that are along Division Street, and as a result, we need to be good partners with the city. There's a small amount of property that they are requesting that we transfer to them. So there are 2 parts to this. In your packet, I gave you a copy around some easement stuff and also around warranty deed. You're not being asked to make any decisions tonight. As we bring this forward, there's a series of processes that we need to do legally to make sure that this transfer happens smoothly. But in our true fashion, I'm trying to give you information tonight. And then I anticipate at least 1 more, if not 2 more, opportunities for you to weigh in on this process, because this is something, of course, even though it's a very small amount of property, we of course don't take lightly. So really what we're looking at is on both the north side, that would be the northwest and the southwest side of Jefferson Parkway. I've been talking 246 and Division, which I now realize is the same, so thanks for talking about 246 and Jefferson. There's a small amount of property on both sides. It's a total of about 4 acres. Now, only 1.7 acres of that are we actually being asked to transfer. The balance of that is already in the right-of-way, and so that's already has shared access. There's an easement process. So really talking about 1.7 acres of that 4 total that the city would need in conjunction with MnDOT to make that process work. As you have heard, we are looking to sell the rock house that is also at the corner of Jefferson and Division. Roughly they're going to need some of that property to make the roundabout work, as the intersection is shuffling a bit to the west. Am I right there? No, it's going to the west. And so we actually have a quote on what it will take to move the rock house. We actually have already also had an inquiry if people would like to give us quotes to buy it and to move it. So we're working through that process right now, but time is of the essence here. So in exchange, we're of course being good partners. We are working with the city because we are 2 governmental entities that have to work well together in this circumstance to make this project work well. In extensive discussions with the city, what the proposal is this exchange. You will also know that one of the areas we have great concern about student safety is when students high school students park across the street in the church parking lot adjacent to the cemetery. If you've gone by that spot in the morning, there's a lot of students who have created their own pathway cutting across 246 or Division Street. And it's the area that, if you remember talking with my predecessor, Dr. Chris Richardson, that was one of his greatest areas of concern for student safety in the entire district. As part of this 246 corridor project, if you will, the city is also planning to implement a pedestrian-activated beacon right at that corner. So they will extend the sidewalk. The rules say that you have to have a sidewalk to sidewalk to have a pedestrian-activated beacon. It will be a crosswalk. It will be right near Bierman Funeral Home and cut across. They're going to extend the sidewalk quite a bit down. I think it goes to Marvin. It might even go a little bit further than that, so that they can make that connection. There's going to be some additional concrete work that needs to happen right there to make that take place. If you remember, when we cost shared the middle school pedestrian activated beacon, we made a contribution of $20,000 in a cost sharing arrangement. In talking with Ben Mardig at the city, the value of the pedestrian activated beacon at Bierman, at the corner there with, that will connect Bierman Funeral Home sidewalk across to the church sidewalk, is around $50,000. That's what the total installation cost would be. Now, in the past, we have said on those kinds of projects we want to be good partners and that we would contribute. And the last time we contributed $20,000 to that project. In this case, what we are looking at, just to simplify things, is that the city would continue forward with that crosswalk implementation with no cost at all to the school. So we get a tremendous student safety improvement as part of this in exchange for really 1.7 acres of land that will also benefit us from the flow of traffic in that area. We also have a concern to make sure that we get what we are promised. So we looked at considering writing into the warranty deeds that the crosswalk would actually happen, and if not, there'd be a financial remuneration to the district. In this case, what will happen is the city council, and I included this in your packet, has a draft city council resolution because their lawyers don't believe that it's appropriate to put this piece into the warranty deed, but the city council is willing to take action separately through a resolution saying, even though the projects have been, I'm assured that they are going to go through, I'm assured that they are on track, if there was something to happen where that did not take place, that would kick back to the fact that the city then would remunerate us for the property. Looking at a $20,000 payment at this point. We're still working through these kinds of things, but this is where we have generally landed. So, truthfully, transferring a relatively small amount of money to the city, or a small amount of acreage to the city, again, really unusable space for us because it's at the corner, giving us both a tremendous amount of safety for our drivers and efficiency for the drivers who are coming through this corridor, with the city's decision to put the tunnel or underpasses under, dramatically increasing the safety for our students who choose to walk or bike to those three schools, connecting with other paths, and then doing I think what is a very significant upgrade for our students who need to cross 246 at Bierman. And so that's where we're at right now with that back and forth with the city in terms of making all of these kinds of things run. I am attending, Jim Colseth is back now from, he was out for a little bit, so I've been attending these very exciting city utility meetings every other week. There's quite a bit of things that need to be relocated, CenturyLink, Excel Energy. There's a lot of coordination happening with this project, including some fiber optic cable that we have to relocate. The project, I'm impressed so far with the coordination that is happening to try to make sure this all happens. We do think that that intersection is they're gonna do everything they can to get to close that right at the end of the school year. You will see some work happening in the ditches well before the school year ends so that some of the utility work can begin. And we do believe it's going to impact that. It will most likely not be done before the start of the school year next year. And there is a possibility they may have to even start before the end of the school year to make sure that they can get that project done. This may be the ultimate example of putting up with the rain to get the rainbow at the end. So that is where we stand today. I wanted to share with you the work that our team has been doing to, again, proactively work with the city on this mutually beneficial project and where we have gone with it to this point. So I'd be happy to, no decision tonight. Any questions you have, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Questions? Tom?
Not so much on the agreements or anything, but the speed limit is 35 miles an hour from about Beerman's going south.
Yep.
Will that change with, or you maybe don't know, but I wonder if that will change with,
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that. What I will tell you is that speed on 246 is governed by MnDOT, right? And so if you recall, they actually did modify that a little bit a couple of years ago when they put the pedestrian activated beacon in. That was one of the main holdups. We had been trying to get that pedestrian activated beacon near the middle school for more than a decade. But it was such a complicated scenario because it did have to be approved by MnDOT since it's a state highway. I have not heard any plans to modify the speed limit at all, but I have to tell you, I have not paid close enough attention to that part of the project. One of the things about the roundabout, why it is the safest option at that location, there's not been a death at a Minnesota roundabout because people have to slow down to get into that corridor. The city is taking the other step to make it extremely safe for bikers and pedestrians by using the underground tunnels, if you will, the pass-throughs or the underpasses, thank you. And so I think that by nature of the roundabout, that will force people to stay at a reasonable speed and actually decrease, but I am not a traffic engineer, nor do I ever want to be a traffic engineer.
No.
You don't have this available on the screen, do you?
I do not have it available on the screen.
On the illustration, to the left of the roundabout, about 2 inches, there's a number 71572. It's just within the border of the orange shading. 21572.
Yep.
Okay. Just to the left, just below the 2, it looks like there is a sidewalk that has some continuation going across the 2 lanes, the 4 lanes of traffic. Am I reading that correctly? Looks like it'd be a crosswalk.
I think what you're looking at is the crosswalk by Bridgewater Elementary. Am I right there?
Yes, yeah. My question is that a crosswalk?
If I'm looking at the right thing,
Let me ask the thing a different way. If it is indeed a crosswalk, I would have hoped there would be some encouragement for them to take, for a walker to take the underpass to the west of the traffic circle to discourage crossing that. And it may be that there needs to be some impairment put in there to discourage that.
It's in the orange.
in the orange. Oh, right by the,
Looks like there's a V, there's a Y in the, or a V in the walking lanes. One going to the west and one going to the
yes,
southwest.
yeah, I don't know I'm trying to think, no, as I'm looking at that, I'm not sure that that is an actual crosswalk at that juncture. And frankly, I'm not sure if that is the exact.
Yeah.
The only piece that I can think there is that a connection to the sidewalk there from the trail.
It's possible, yeah.
Because some of that trail then goes into the baseball field, the rock fields parking lot.
Yeah.
And just on this, the only thing is that actually an entry to the sidewalk. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, it doesn't look like, I don't know what, I'm sorry. It doesn't look like a crosswalk. I don't know what that might be.
It's not a crosswalk shown on the traffic lanes, but it looks like it's approaching the traffic lanes.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. The city put out a blurb on this, and they have a picture, and it shows like there are trees right in the median there too, so I don't know. Maybe it's for bikes to exit?
And there's one on the north, if you look up, there's something similar in the orange on the north, but it's modeled.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if it's drainage or something like that.
And I do apologize, I could have had representatives from the city here tonight, but I didn't think we'd get to that level of detail on the plan.
All right. No problem.
Jeff?
Just hypothetical, if we end up building a new school, senior high, where the ballparks are now, planned similar to Andover, two-story, as we've talked about. Did we talk before, any time within that discussion of having a roundabout there? And so that's the whole thing. So I mean, what effect does that have on placing a school there, and now or in the future is an issue, obviously. But, I mean, we could make, it would be an adjustment, but I don't think we ever talked about that. But, obviously, a number one responsibility is student safety and the best possible plan to get kids to and from school. So, I mean, I think with the, walking underneath, if that's, obviously, I'm sure they thought about this, that's the best place to put that. There's obviously topics to consider. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if that's been thought about.
Well, and of course, that's a hypothetical.
Right.
I mean, we know that some of the post-election data that we got about the bond in 2017 was some real concern about the plan that we had for this property, specifically thinking about the demolition of this building. If we were to continue along the line with the plan that we had already, I don't think this would be a significant impact, because if you think about it, we were still planning to take the Rock House down, we're still planning to go into some of the current athletic fields, and so what I think is that this is very minor in the grand overall scheme of that particular plan. Now, of course, if we were to move forward discussing about a new high school at some point, I think there's a number of other things that we have to take into consideration. The current plan that our master facilities plan entails, things have changed, not just with something like this, but there's been a number of other things that have changed since that master facilities plan. And I think we would really need to do a deep dive in terms of, is that still the right approach, or are there some other things to think through? But we're going to get the other projects done first before we, think, in my mind, where we think about that. But I don't, Jeff, if we were to put our previous plans, I don't see a major impact, because again, you're only talking about less than 2 acres of property on both sides of 246 that are not, or on both sides of Jefferson Parkway, that are not in the right-of-way. We would have had an issue of going into the right-of-way before anyway, right? Because we wouldn't have been able to do that. So I feel fairly confident that that plan would still work even with this.
Rob.
2 questions about, first one is about the snow removal on the sidewalks. I mean, some of that sidewalk goes in front of Bridgewater. I mean, where does the city's responsibility start, and where does the schools start?
So what I will tell you is that I think we have a pretty good relationship overall with the city. There are parts that we maintain that the city owns out of the fact that we're already there. There are parts that we own where the city will clear for us, depending on the location. There are some spots where we have to stop and the city begins. That's just the way some of that works. However, I don't know the answer to that. On the sidewalks that we have in front of Bridgewater, I know that they do clear. Our people do clear as part of that with the small brush units that they have. I don't have any further detail for you on the elements of snow removal other than that.
And then the second question is, has there been discussion about the possible impacts of possibly increased bike traffic in front of Bridgewater? Because that's going to be the Middletown's trail going right in front of.
Yes, I don't think that we have gotten that far yet. I think we would all welcome additional bike traffic. I think that that would be a positive thing. I have not seen anything yet of the finalization of those plans. Part of this roundabout part was thought about with the Middletown's trail part in mind to make it simpler to connect up where that trail will end out by Spring Creek Park. I have not seen anything further on that at this point.
Great questions. Amy?
So I have 2 questions as well. My first question has to do with this same diagram, and it's just a simple one. Will the city be responsible for the boulevard area between the sidewalk and the street for mowing that? Or is that school property? I'm just curious.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, if it's adjacent to there's another partnership with the city of the fact that there are properties that we help mow for the city. because they make sense for us to mow. And then there are things that the city also helps us with. Our buildings and grounds teams have a really positive relationship with the city public works department, and there's a lot of collaboration that happens. So I'll just give you one example. The Sibley soccer field, the one that's the Sibley sledding hill. Now that is city property, but we are the primary beneficiary of that. So we will often mow it and stripe it and do all those things, and as part of that overall working together with the city. That's just one example of that.
Okay.
But at that point, I just don't know who would mow that boulevard.
And my second question is more serious, I guess. It's on the resolution form, and it's the red wording that you so kindly highlighted for us. And it's they are very vague in where they say they're going to put the crosswalk. They say at the front entrance to Northfield High School, and that's the part that concerns me a little bit, because I see the front entrance as being down by where the driveway comes in, right across from the cemetery. And I guess I would wonder if they could make that resolution verbiage be a little more specific.
So I am sure that that's negotiable. I do think that that second part, where they talk about it at Marvin Lane, provides, if you look at the last part of that, it specifies the sidewalk that attaches to Marvin Lane, which I do think, gets us to that point, but we can certainly ask for greater specificity.
Marvin Lane is way north though, so they could do a sidewalk all the way up the cemetery and past the, Cornerstone Community Church and up to Marvin Lane.
Yes, we can absolutely ask them for some greater clarification. This was the draft concept that we talked about to simplify the process rather than including it in the warranty deed. So I don't believe that there was any vagueness in terms of intentionality. It was, I asked, this is something we're really interested in making sure we have in writing. The city suggested that this was the way to do it, and this was their first effort at that. That's something that the board would like some greater specificity on. What I would suggest we could do is we could certainly use the addresses of the locations. Now, I'm not an expert in this kind of resolution by the city council, so there might be something that precludes that. I am comfortable with the intent, of this, and I think I could even make an argument, a very strong, reasoned argument based upon what they've written here, that the construction, from the Marvin Lane extension to the one by the entrance to the Northfield High School. But I appreciate the point that you're right. People don't always look at the front entrance, even though it's door number 1, right, that we have as that. So we can certainly ask them to make that modification. I don't see that as being a huge deal. This was the good faith effort to show that, yes, they're going to follow through on that component.
Thank you. I think that most people would think from a driving perspective that a crosswalk by the front entrance where the cars turn in makes more sense to the drivers, but a crosswalk up by the funeral home will seem a little out of place, but that's where it needs to go, because that's where the kids are crossing, and the kids are still going to keep crossing there. They're not going to walk down south and then back up north again.
Having done this for a while, you are absolutely right. That will be the path of least resistance. This is going to be a substantial upgrade. I think that's a very minor clarification. The city has been nothing but very good on this particular item, and so I have no issue. I don't believe that anyone's going to have a concern with that.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? To just expand on what Amy said. So I really appreciate that we're taking this step to be sure that so we know that thanks to all the great reporting Sam's been doing in the Northfield News about the roundabout, we really have been able to follow what the city's been doing. And one thing we know is it's about $1.5 million over budget at this point, but they remain committed to it. So the $50,000 that it appears to take to do the crosswalk, they would have the option. Do they have the option of just paying us the $20,000 for the land and saying we're going to pass on doing the crosswalk?
That's a great question. My understanding of the funding mechanism for the cost overruns that you have mentioned is through a different funding mechanism. It's not going to increase property taxes and everything. I have understood that the property tax part is set. I also do know that they are committed to the entirety, from where this begins through the roundabout. At least that's what I have understood, from my contacts at the city. I have not heard in that discussion around the increase in the cost due to some of the soil borings and some of those other kinds of things. I have not heard any mention of considering scaling back the project at all. I have not heard any of that. But writing this in, because I think that this is a really important part of this whole, a lot of people are rightfully understandably focused on the roundabout, but this part right here is an incredibly valuable part of this project for our students. I have not heard anyone say that that was an option or a consideration. In fact, if you really think about it, this resolution would say that they are going to do it, because they're putting in a resolution format that the city council hereby agrees as part of the project at the city's cost and expense will construct and install. That's pretty strong language. We know what it's like when we take a resolution, and I think that it's a similar level of weight with this one, but that is something I can certainly emphasize.
Yeah, I mean, that exactly, because as the, discussion and the decision points come for the city council, and I'm not sure if they have a opportunity for community weigh-in, potentially some issue around adding the sidewalk. I mean, this is really extremely important for the school district to get done. And I appreciate all the steps and the collaboration and the attention to detail that we've had as a school district and how we're working with the city, but yet knowing they have some decision points moving forward where we will ultimately potentially end up. And I appreciate all the extra steps you're taking to see this through, because this is extremely important to us. And it isn't anything we can just do. They have to do the sidewalk piece and all some other things. And we have that learning curve from the middle school, and we're so appreciative that crosswalk's there, but I think this is even just extremely important. So thank you for all of that, and for really looking at the changes in the resolutions and some of the workarounds that we're doing with the warranty deed to ensure that we're covered there. So. And
I do want to emphasize too, if I can just briefly, that all of the documents that we've shared with you, the only one that is still in process is the resolution.
Okay.
But we've had Jay Squires, who was our property attorney from Rupp Squires, Rupp Anderson Squires in Walsburger. Jay has looked over the warranty deeds, the easement. He actually made a suggestion about some indemnification language that the city accepted immediately. So our legal team has taken a look at the documents so far.
Excellent. Ellen?
This is just a minor thing, but I was wondering on both the city council and the temporary easement, why it was in ISD 965, is that rather than 659?
I'm guessing that it's either a typo. I'm guessing it's a typo. So we will, thank you, we will catch that, because I'm not sure who District 965 is, but I'm not sure that maybe they would want a crosswalk as well, but we prefer to have it on our piece. Thank you for catching that, Ellen.
Okay.
That's one of those things you read it many times and you don't even see that one.
Well, thank you for all your great questions. And we know we'll move forward with the decision points we need to have, and we just appreciate seeing this, continually come before us, so we can see how this hopefully this project evolves and comes to fruition. Okay, so our last item for discussion is the Teaching and Learning Department restructure. Dr. Hellman.
Yeah, so in your packet I included a narrative of some changes that we are looking to make within our Teaching and Learning Department. And this was also shared with you at the last board meeting during Val Murdesdorf's financial projection. So I think the first thing I want to start off with, and I think she intentionally stayed away from the meeting tonight so that I could not give her the proper respect she is due, but Director of Teaching and Learning Mary Grace Hansen has decided to retire at the end of the year, capping off a long and storied career as a first grade teacher and elementary school principal for a long time, and for the last 8 years as our Director of Teaching and Learning. Mary was really instrumental, especially in the major change that we had and that you've heard over and over about the collaborative classroom curriculum and the modernization of our literacy instructor. So to begin with this, I just need to say thank you to Mary and how grateful we are for the work that she has done. She has certainly earned her retirement. She has been telling me the plans that she has for the summer and for next fall. And substitute teaching is not among it, let's just put it that way. So Mary has had a long and a storied career, and we're very grateful for her service over the past 8 years for Northfield Public Schools. As you know, every time that we have a change in position like this, being good stewards and effectively managing the district's finances, we always say, is this the right structure moving forward? And as we looked at the financial forecast that you have seen, as we discussed the strategies that we're looking at moving forward, we determined that there was an opportunity to combine some of our leadership piece, effectively cutting an administrative position. We also looked at the team that Mary works with in terms of the 6 elementary instructional coaches that we have had in place for the last 8 years as well. And we think that it is time to recommend a modification in how we provide those academic coaching services moving forward. So for the purpose of clarity, you've heard us talk about instructional coaches and behavioral coaches, right? What we're talking about tonight are academic instructional coaches at the elementary level. There are 6 FTE in that category. The behavioral coaches are not what we are talking about. So the instructional coaches' behavior, we're suggesting that those stay exactly the same. You've heard about the student and children's mental health issues that they're helping with. We think that that is something that for right now we need to continue forward. So what you will see is we're proposing to combine the Director of Teaching and Learning position with the current Director of Assessment Services position. We have a very capable and excellent leader as our Director of Assessment Services, Hope Langston, who you've heard from many times, who has the skills and the attitude and the tenacity to make these positions come together in a way that still provides excellent service to our administrators, to our teachers, to our other staff, and to our families. You'll see that by combining those positions, merging those positions, we're looking at nearly a savings around $150,000 per year. We're going to recommend streamlining those elementary-focused academic instructional coaching positions from 6 to 3. And those 3 instructional coaches will now also serve a pre-K-12 setting. So one of the pieces that we're struggling with and we'd like to do more work around is what's called the vertical articulation of our curriculum. So when we teach a lesson in mathematics in 4th grade, are we building on that in 6th grade, or are we teaching the same lesson in 4th grade, which can happen? We currently don't have a lot of people who are seeing all grade levels, pre-K through 12, to manage and to provide feedback on that pre-K-12 vertical articulation. We think that that's a significant benefit of merging these, or combining these positions, streamlining them, and being able to have a more district-wide focus. They would also be housed out of the district office. We have a plan for where they would be in the Longfellow district office with the rest of the district leadership. And again, making sure that they're district level employees who are going out and serving the schools, but trying to do so holistically across the entire spectrum. You'll see that there's a savings of nearly $330,000 with that. We also have to make we're suggesting that we make a small add as part of this restructuring. The current Director of Teaching and Learning's department's administrative assistant is currently not full-time, nor is that position year-round. And we think to provide the support, taking 2 administrative positions and merging them into one, making sure that there's the effective administrative support for things like pre-test edits in terms of the kinds of data that we need to do with the state, making sure that we are looking at how we order equipment and other kinds of things. This position would serve both the technology services and the instructional services department. Again, restructuring and making sure that the duties are aligned and are as efficient as they possibly can. That's a pretty small add comparatively, and you'll see that there is still a savings to the district of $461,565. There's no other way to say that this would be a cut in services to our elementary schools. Every elementary school currently has 2 academic-focused instructional coaches, and those positions would come back to the district. They would still get service. It would be in a different way and at a different cadence, if you will. However, we are always proactive in trying to make sure that when we think it's time to do some restructuring, that we look to do so. And anytime that we have a retirement or resignation, especially in an administrative department, we take that opportunity to make sure either recommit to the approach that we've had, which we've done a number of times, or take a look, are we able to make a merger and do this? We happen to have the right person. We have a number of things in place, and this will move forward. Now, I will tell you that our administrative team had discussed the streamlining of the academic coaches for some time, and as was noted in my review, I am very collaborative in the decision-making process. I am the one that made the recommendation on the merger of the teaching and learning with assessment services because I felt that was important to come from the superintendent's office as opposed to a broader administrative team discussion. It's rare that I do that, but I just want to own that and share that with you at this time. Not asking for any kind of action on this evening. Of course, you've already approved Mary Grace's retirement, but we will be looking at making these changes in the next couple of meetings. I have talked with the people affected by this face to face so that they know it's coming. People are gracious, they've asked good questions, and I really appreciate the professionalism that they have shown. When we talk, they're all guaranteed a job, right? The people who are in these current positions, it's not as if they won't have a job, they will, they'll go back to the classroom. And that's one other piece I want to share as we develop the job description for these new 3 district level coaches. One of the things that I'm going to write into the job description is a term limitation. One of the goals that I have for the district and our administrative team has for the district is to develop the next generation of our educational leaders. And in our system, we just don't have a tremendous amount of opportunities for that. These district level coaching positions are one of those opportunities where we are still finalizing what would the term limitation be, how long could you be in a position, but we would post it in that way to say that if after the end of a certain number of years, let's say 3 or 4, when your term is up, you would go back to the classroom and we would hire someone new for that. We'd of course stagger the positions, so we always have 2 people who have had some experience. The reason that we want to do that is we want to develop the next generation of educational leaders. We assume that a lot of people who go for those kinds of positions may seek an administrative career. They may also not, and it might just be something that they'd like to do to have a different experience outside of the classroom. And then when you return to the classroom, I now have this much broader view of the system rather than from my teaching position if I've only had that in the district. So while there's no other way to say it, that there are cuts that are part of this, gotta be straightforward about that, there are also some pieces that we think can have the opportunity to move the district's goals forward into the future. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, no action taken this evening, but I wanted to make sure that we brought it to your attention that this is the recommendation moving forward.
Excellent. Amy?
So 2 questions. One is the instructional coaches coach the teachers, is that right?
Over time, they've done a variety of different things. Are you talking about in their current format or in their future format?
Both.
Yeah, so over time, the instructional coach positions in our district have varied. They are responsible, as you've heard from our elementary principals. This year, they've been responsible for some intervention and enrichment work. Over the years, they've been responsible for interventions. Originally, the intent was for people to coach the teachers on how to do interventions, which they have done, and they've done it capably. And then over time, they've also had a number of other different responsibilities within the school. A lot of different things, from managing some of the testing situation to, again, intervening with struggling students or coordinating some volunteers, things like that. And again, I'm very grateful for the work that these folks have done. They've done an excellent job over the time that they've done it. However, as we move forward into a new reality of addressing the chronic state underfunding of our schools and the decisions that we'll be forced to make as a result of that collective lack of funding at the state level, these are the kinds of reorganizations and streamlining that we will have to do in order to maintain class sizes and other kinds of things that we know are really important to parents. So yes and more.
So going forward, they will be instructional teacher coaches.
So that's what our plan, we may still have them do some targeted work with some students across the district. We are still working on that job description, but the intent would be that they are providing true instructional coaching across the district, up and down the spectrum.
Okay, so my second question is, so all of these people who currently have these positions will be able to find a position somewhere, but clearly we're still losing 3 positions in the district. So does that mean that there will be 3 people who will lose positions? Or does that mean that it'll just kind of happen naturally through attrition and everything will work itself out?
It will most likely be a combination. It is very possible that we could have enough retirements within the area that for which these people are licensed, where it may be a net loss of 0. That's very possible. People have until April 1st to tell us that they're going to retire. We already know of some retirements that will create some positions. Remember that at our middle, it's not just in the elementaries, but people are often licensed for things other than just, an elementary school. So, and in fact, our 6th grade teachers who are housed at the middle school also are able to use an elementary license. So I know of at least one retirement at the middle school where that will open a possibility for us. There may be some other dominoes and some other moving around. What I have talked with these folks about is that because of their long and distinguished service in these roles, that we have asked them for what their preference of a position would be, and we will do everything that we are able to honor that preference. I was very clear that that's not something I can guarantee, but we really want to honor the work that they've done, and to the best of our ability, we'll take their preference into consideration. So if there's the concept that they have an interest in a specific grade level on teaching, we will do what we can to accommodate that within the standard staffing process that we use. It is not uncommon for people to change grade levels or move schools during the staffing process, and we anticipate that it will work out during this year's staffing process. That being said, it is very possible that we would have to reduce some people, and that would come from our probationary teacher pool. So it would be people who have not yet achieved tenure. If we aren't in that case, to make room, which actually happens quite often if we have someone who's out on leave, right, and they come back, that person who is long-term substituting for them, or if they were in a probationary, that is part of the staffing process that we use this year. I do have confidence that we will have enough attrition, either through retirements or resignations, that we will be able to make this work. However, I need to be straightforward with you that there is a strong possibility that if that were to not happen, that a probationary teacher or two, would have to be released in accordance with the Minnesota Tenure Act. So.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing us this, and I like the thought that you put into it. And I was thinking about with Gary Lewis and when the RTI coaches were first on board, and they, the intent sort of changed, and the tenure of those positions changed, which, as you're responsive to the district's needs through time, things change. And so I really appreciate looking at our financial well-being and also having, rethinking about what those positions could be, and then having the right person with Mary Grace retiring available to sort of look at this new position. So I really appreciate this, and I think that this makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Rob?
Just curious because, it kind of connects to Amy's question. Scott in his report highlighted that there were like 144 students who were served by the coaches in enrichment activities, and so is there another way of addressing that without these coaches? And I was also wondering, I think we used to, do we still get money from the state for gifted and talented or whatever? So
yes, so great questions. We are still committed, as we always have been, to providing enrichment opportunities for students who would qualify for those kinds of opportunities. We have, as you know, we have done enrichment a variety of ways over the years, many different ways. This is the latest iteration of how we have done that. We will find another iteration to do that. It will be different. There's no way to say it. Other way to say it. We have talked about, as a matter of fact, one example, as you remember when we moved one of the current instructional coaches to an EL teacher for this year, scheduled to come back to the instructional coach position at the end of the year, we did not replace that person. That was a move and a good financial management tool. And to make those groups happen, we had a number of people pitch in to be able to provide that enrichment at Bridgewater. So the enrichment in Bridgewater, Hope Langston actually took several groups. We had some other folks through the Achievement and Integration Grant that we were able to reallocate to look at those groups. And so it's a matter of making sure that we look at what are the instructional priorities, how do we leverage all of the people who we already have on salary to do that and who have the time to be able to make it happen, making the most efficient use of our schedules, continuing to use the college volunteers that we have, though you also heard a concern about some drop in volunteerism, which is something that has often been able to help us with these kinds of groups. We will, of course, not abandon that. We will double down and say, how do we make that happen? And I have great confidence that we can. These district coaches, that could be part of their role, that I envision them having a day a week at an elementary school or even more than that. They'll be helping with some assessment pieces and some other things, a much broader scope than what they have right now. So I absolutely, completely appreciate that question. We are committed to making sure that we provide those enrichment opportunities. Second question, we do get, I believe, Val, $14 a pupil unit, if I'm right, for gifted and talented? 13, I was very close. Not too bad, right, for a Monday night at 9:15. So $13, which goes not very far. And the other thing that we always have to think about when we talk about gifted and talented is often thought of as this very broad category, yet the true definition of gifted and talented is a very narrow band of our students. In fact, it's much more narrow than the students who receive enrichment at our school. And I won't go further into that at this point, but what I'll tell you is that the $14 that we get $13 that we get per student, when you look at it, it's not inconsequential, but we are already providing far more than that money allows, just like nearly everything else.
Excellent. Other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move on now to, on the agenda, we have committee reports, the opportunity for board members to talk about their liaison committee, or their committee work that they do as a liaison to the board. And we did not have any of those this meeting, so now we will move on to approval of the consent grouping. As a reminder, there were a few personnel items in the table file that were added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping? Is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Amy. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, items for individual action tonight. Unique in that we have the two items are proclamations. One of the proclamations was included in the table file, so we will actually I will read the proclamations and then we'll ask for a motion to approve. So the first proclamation is Thank a Coach Advisor Week proclamation for the week of starting today, January 27th through February 2nd. Whereas the current membership of the high school coaches and advisors registered is over 10,000 adults dedicating hundreds of hours in service of the youth of Minnesota. And whereas the Minnesota State High School League was formed in 1916 and the Minnesota Interscholastic Activities Administrators Association is celebrating 50 years of service to mentoring coaches and advisors. The Minnesota State High School Coaches Association was formed in 1936, and this joint effort has been formed to recognize, support, and recruit coaches across Minnesota. Whereas studies show educational-based activities and programs can enhance student success across multiple areas, including higher grade point averages, better attendance in school, and character development. And whereas the impact of coaches and advisors is an asset to their professions, students, school districts, and local communities. Now, therefore, the Northfield Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim January 27th through February 2nd, 2020 as Thanks a Coach Advisor Week. So is there a motion to approve the Thank a Coach Advisor Week proclamation as presented? Yay, Jeff is approving that motion. Is there a second? Second by Tom. Is there any comments or questions regarding this proclamation? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so I have where is the educator? Somehow I don't have it. Does someone have the proclamation? Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. Okay, so our second proclamation is the Paraprofessional Recognition Week proclamation. And that is also this week, January 27th. Here they have through January 31st Good Friday. Whereas Minnesota is home to more than 20,000 paraprofessionals who provide services in multiple settings within the schools, including support for instruction, student activities, and for individual students, as well as numerous other tasks that contribute to educational success. And whereas the support of services provided by paraprofessionals are integral to student achievement, resulting in even better, more effective Minnesota schools. And whereas the state of Minnesota and the Minnesota Department of Education are committed to excellence in education and recognize the important role that paraprofessionals play in ensuring educational success. And whereas the Minnesota Department of Education will celebrate the contributions of paraprofessionals during Paraprofessional Recognition Week, which runs from January 27th through January 31st, 2020. Now therefore, the Northfield Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim January 27 through January 31, 2020 as Paraprofessional Recognition Week. Is there a motion to approve this proclamation? Moved by Amy. Is there a second? Second by Ellen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that takes care of our 2 items for individual action. We have items for information in your packet. School board committee appointments. I want to thank board members for their work on these committees and their willingness to work around some different responsibilities we slotted board members into this year. I think it's excellent that board members will have some opportunity to serve on some different committees and to understand some other things happening within the district that maybe they hadn't had the opportunity to do prior. So thank you everyone for their service on these committees. Next item for information is construction update number 20, Dr. Hillman.
Well, in the words of our former business manager, Tom Stringer, we keep on keeping on here is really what we are doing, and you will see that we have some very limited updates this month that we just continue forward with construction at the 2 locations where it's currently going now at Greenville Park and at Sibley. We are anticipating that the Bridgewater, the former offices will be open next week. We know that they were putting the flooring in either early this week or middle this week. I was by there last week and the painting is completed, looking great. Some really cool things. We'll give you an opportunity to come through and see that after that is done. And then, of course, Project Oversight Committee has continued to meet, and we are preparing for the bidding process for the renovation of the Greenville Park, the current Greenville Park School, and the Longfellow, and those are happening in the next couple of months.
Excellent. Questions, comments on construction updates? Okay. So future meetings, our next meeting, Monday, February 10th, that again on Monday, February 24th, as we look ahead to March, Monday, March 9th, and Monday, March 30th, which we...
That's a special board meeting for the purposes of hopefully accepting some bids.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize that. So our regular school board meetings that are Monday, February 10th, Monday, February 24th, and Monday, March 9th. We have a special board meeting on Monday, March 30th, and that is to approve, I believe, the Longfellow.
Longfellow bids, that's correct.
And what about the February 27th meeting?
Yep, so
Yes.
it looks like we have a quorum for that meeting, so we didn't have all that information before we got to send this out to you, so we'll be posting the special meeting on February 27th, specific 5 p.m. here, specific to accepting the bids for the Greenville Park remodel.
Okay, so to recap then, in the month of February, we'll be meeting for 2 regular board meetings on the 10th and on the 24th. And then we will have a special board meeting to approve the Greenville Park renovation bids on Thursday, February 27th at 5 p.m.
Is that in the district office or here?
We'll have it here. We've been holding those special meetings for the purposes of accepting the bids here to ensure transparency. So that's something that we're doing. And then in addition, we just want, the reason for that 27th is that as the construction company was looking at the bid process, they felt we would have a better bid day by extending it just a little bit. And so far, we're so good. So we trust what they suggest in these areas. And I just want to make one more comment just to make sure that board members know that I won't be here at the February 10th meeting. Director of Community Services Aaron Bailey will be sitting in a seat very capably But as you know, you have authorized me to work on my national superintendent certification, and that is the final week of the 2-year training. And I'll be graduating from that program, and so I'll be in San Diego that day, and so I will not be here, but of course I'll pay attention from afar. So just know that I will not be able to be here the next time.
Excellent. All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned.
Good job, everybody.